I had another female mentor who was a senior director who said, don't let anybody get in your way. Be the uncomfortable person at the table. I also, on the flip side of that, received comments that if I could watch what came out of my mouth, I would be much more successful in my career. That came from a man. I had other situations coming in from male leaders who would tell me things like, you come across a little abrasive. So I had to sit back and say, okay, I can sit here and be agreeable and watch our company take the wrong steps and not grow at the rate I know we're capable of growing. Or I can make people a little bit uncomfortable and ask the tough questions. And if they want to come along, great. If not, then my value has outlived its lifespan at this company.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Christy Falteruso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning Customer Success Executive. I am so thrilled to introduce today's guest, Steph Reck, Chief Revenue Officer at Japhy AI. Hey, Steph, welcome to the show.
Hi, Christy. Thanks so much for having me today.
I'm so excited for our conversation, but before we get started, I want to do a little play here because I don't normally do this. We don't usually really go off script. Can you show, for people that are watching, can you lift your coffee cup? Okay, so now anyone who's watching will see that the coffee cup says, she's a wrecking ball. And I love that. But now I want you to start by giving us, what is the story behind She's a Wrecking Ball?
Well, I tend to come into companies when they're at a position of disarray. They've grown to an extent that they now don't know what to do with their company. They don't know how to scale. They don't have process and procedures. They just kind of gobbled things together and figured it out of oftentimes sheer luck and hard work. And they'll bring me in to kind of blow that up, wreck it internally, and then put it back together in a very durable and sustainable manner so that they are ready to scale efficiently.
I love that so much. I love that you're using the cup today. I think it's so on brand for our conversation, and we're going to get to hear the stories that probably help us understand why you're the wrecking ball. So, Steph, before we get started, I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about you, your role as a CRO. So let's get started there.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently with an AI startup. I love to be with companies that are disruptors in their industry, kind of first to market. It has its own challenges. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with selling a first to market product. People don't have revenue for that. They don't have a budget line item. You're not replacing something. And so that comes with its own sales challenges and go-to-market challenge. But I find it interesting. Certainly as a company with a solid product market fit and a large footprint and market share can be an easier, uptick in scalability. But it is so fun to go in with a new challenge each time. And this is one of those. So we are disrupting the learning and development space and giving people the opportunity to demonstrate their learned knowledge across communication.
I love that. And you've been a CRO for a while, right? This isn't your first rodeo. Where are some of the other companies that you worked that you were CRO?
Media Monks and one of their portcos that they acquired over a 3-year period. Media Monks acquired 33 companies across 30 countries. So I call it the rule of threes. And we had one that was underperforming. They brought me in to first manage the CS side of the house and align a company that was at a downward trend for 2 years, right size that, bring it to profitability. And within about a month, I took over the marketing and sales as well. So I was managing the entire go-to-market strategy.
Wow. So you had sales, marketing, and customer success.
And business services, yes.
You literally had the trifecta. So this is so interesting. We've had folks on the show that have had sales and marketing together. Mm-hmm. I've had people that have had sales and CS together. And at some point you had all of them together. Yes. I got to ask you now, I believe I want to make assumptions here so badly, but I won't, about the the way that could actually have a really positive impact on the business. From your perspective, why do you think that was a winning strategy for the company at that time?
I think it comes down to companies who have divisions that are siloed. And when you can break down those walls and work cross-functionally in a very effective manner, the entire company starts to hum and you might say row in the same direction. That comes down to helping each department head understand what the motivators are for the other departments. So how are they motivated? How are they measured? Let's get rid of any duplicate work. Because oftentimes you find, as you get people together in a room, there are 3 people doing the same or a part of that work. And then you find that the things you thought were getting done were actually not being done by anyone, right? So
yep.
I look at a role responsibility matrix, a seat skill matrix, and a people skills matrix when I come into companies, and I start to identify where do we have gaps in skills, responsibility, how do we need to kind of re-engineer the seats, and how do we work better cross-functionally. This gives us opportunities for career growth and a lattice-based approach. And it also gets people just starting to ask questions and be curious about the other departments and how they work. My intent is always to get people out of their comfort zone and asking those tough questions that they've never had room to ask. So it's about opening the door for people, giving them a seat at the table, and then giving them the space to be creative and curious and solve problems.
That makes, it's spot on with why I would see that there would be tremendous benefit there. I feel like just diving into that could be an entire episode unrelated to what this podcast is about, but maybe we do a follow-up webinar there, because I think that there is a story to unpack, because to your point, all the organizations that we look at all have these silos, right? And there's like this competitiveness because we have competing priorities between all these functions. And so you never really get that machine humming the way that you described. So I'm interested in learning more from you, Steph, but we're going to table that for now. And we're actually going to dive into where your journey started. So yeah. I always like to start with like when you were young, right? You're a little girl. You did not have grand dreams of becoming a CRO. Or maybe you did. And if you did, I'm interested in hearing that too. But usually folks don't. And so I want you to tell me, what did you want to be when you were growing up? What were those career aspirations? And how did that actually get you to where you are today?
Well, I wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist. And I grew up in a broken home. I ended up in foster care, and I decided that I was never going to be poor. I saw the side, one side of that coin, and then I saw another side in very constructive, healthy group homes and foster homes in nicer communities, nicer homes. And I was fostered by a single mother. And she had just figured it out how to co-parent with her ex-spouse. And I saw that it was healthy. You could be healthy, you could be happy, and you could live in nice houses and nice neighborhoods. And I decided early on that that's what I wanted for my life. I was also raised in a very religious household. So I had already a lot of learned behaviors about who I was supposed to be when I grew up and the role that I was supposed to play, which was a wife and a mother starting at a very young age. But I decided I wanted to always have a career. So as a sophomore in high school, I went to nursing school. It was something that was made available to me through Monterey High School. And I got my first degree in nursing just as I turned 17, going into my junior year of high school.
I love that. Did you ever practice? Were you a nurse?
I practiced as a nurse in a long-term facility, skilled nursing facility. And then I ended up moving from California to Washington State. And in a matter of 1 year, I ended up getting married. So I got married shortly after my 18th birthday, which was very on par with the religious.
I was going to say, it sounds like you were on the appropriate timeline based on how you were raised. Mm-hmm.
I was. So a lot of the girls that I grew up with would go to college to get their MRS degree, which is their Mrs. degree. and get married. And you did not date to date, you dated to marry.
Yeah.
So I did that. That was my learned behavior. I very quickly became a single mother. So my aspirations of going to med school changed. I needed to support my family as a single parent of two infants, a toddler and an infant, really. And I stumbled into a sales coordinator position within hospitality. And that was the start of my journey in sales.
Wow. Do you have any regrets? Do you ever think wow, I wish I would have pursued a career in medicine and become the cardiologist? Or do you feel no, that was what I wanted, but actually coming to where I am today, this is where I'm supposed to be?
I don't have any regrets, because looking back as a single mother of two children and the different struggles that we went through, it would have been considerably more difficult if I had worked a career that took me out of the home more often. And my children needed me. So I certainly worked a lot of hours, but I at least worked kind of your normal 8 to 5, 8 to 6 schedule, which allowed me the opportunity to get them to and from sports and do all the things that a parent wants to do with their children. And at the same time, I was able to make a living that allowed us to live fairly comfortably.
That's great. And I'm sure your family obviously benefited from your presence. And so I never think that it's the wrong decision to prioritize your family, especially children, especially when they need you the most. So makes a ton of sense. It sounds like you've obviously had a very successful career in sales. And so I want to pivot a little bit there and talk more about some of the pivotal moments that got you to where we are today. So when you reflect back on your journey, starting as your sales coordinator in hospitality, what were the pivotal moments or decisions that really helped contribute to your ascent to the C-suite?
I had a sales manager that I worked for who just, I guess she was very alluring to me. She dressed well. She had a level of gravitas about her. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to be able to walk into a room and have people immediately respect the insight and the knowledge that I brought to the table. So I leaned into that a little bit, and I wish that I'd had an opportunity to have more mentors like her. It wasn't until, maybe 4 or 5 years later that I had another female mentor who was a senior director within another firm that I worked for, who said, don't let anybody get in your way. Be the uncomfortable person at the table. And I'm paraphrasing, but she made it okay for me to ask questions and not just sit there and be a people pleaser and be agreeable, which was also all the learned behaviors that we had back in the 70s and 80s, right?
I mean, sadly, I still think that those are still learned behaviors a lot of us are trying to unlearn today, right? Like how many times do you see people just be quiet in a room? Usually, especially if we're in tech, right? Like rooms filled with men. You never hear the men sitting back and being quiet, but you will see a passive woman taking notes and just listening intently when you know that their head is just busting with ideas. So I love that that was something that you got exposure to early in your career.
Yeah. I also, on the flip side of that, received comments that if I could watch what came out of my mouth, I would be much more successful in my career. That came from a man. I had other situations coming in from male leaders who would tell me things like, you come across a little abrasive. But because I had someone like Sandy who said, make them uncomfortable. Somebody who follows the rules doesn't end first in the race. I was able to learn to stand up for myself. Now, it took a while because for a long time, I just thought, well, if I did a really good job, it would be noticed. And it wasn't. I didn't get the promotions. I didn't get the raises unless I left my company and went to another company. That was the way I was going to get a raise or a promotion. And I didn't love that. I much prefer to stay with a company longer term and make a longer term impact in an organization. Part of that is because I love people development. So I had to sit back and say, okay, I can sit here and be agreeable and watch our company take the wrong steps and not grow at the rate I know we're capable of growing and not take advantage of the opportunities in front of us. Or I can make people a little bit uncomfortable and ask the tough questions. And if they want to come along, great. If not, then my value has outlived its lifespan at this company. And that happened a couple of times. And there's a bit of remorse that we have, I think, if we truly believed in the opportunity at an organization or the value of the people at the company. And it's hard to walk away from that, right? We tend to get into that sunk cost situation where I put in all this time and this effort and I really want to see this go through. But at the end of the day, a lot of companies see us as a number. And I don't care what position you hold in a company, you're still a number. And our tenure at the C-suite level is right now about 18 months. So we have a very short period of time to make impact at a company, help pivot culture if needed, really help set the company up for future success versus in previous levels at orgs, I was able to stay there for 5 and 6 years. I would love to, in 7 years at some of them, I would love to get back to that. And I would love for people at the C-suite to be able to have that longevity at companies as well and the stability at companies. And I don't think that a lot of people who are looking to just climb the ladder understand the level of volatility the higher you get. I don't think it's talked about enough.
I don't think so either. So can we talk about that?
Sure.
All right. Well, let's get very vulnerable here because I'm sure that we've had maybe there's some different experiences that we've both had in our professional careers, but I would love if we can spend a couple minutes really talking through like those significant challenges and obstacles that you've faced and how you overcame them.
Some significant challenges are you are hired into a role with certain goals, you get in, and that goalpost is immediately changed. And it's oftentimes changed based on, fear at the board level, inexperience at the CEO's level. I had founders who don't have tough enough skin. They don't have the chops to be a founder. And they don't understand the volatility. They don't understand how we measure success at an early stage startup. And they just want that end goal of hitting revenue, but they don't understand the steps necessary to get there and that those are all incremental wins and it takes time. So we can oftentimes get into a position where, again, that goalpost has been moved and all of a sudden we have to riff 10% of our staff while still hitting our number. So we walk in thinking we have this plan in place that's going to help this company grow. And instead, we're helping the company decrease its headcount. Sets the wrong tone. Now you have a lot more work to build trust amongst the staff. All of our numbers have changed now. We have decreased resources, the same number of clients or close to it oftentimes. Now we have to reallocate resources to clients. It puts a lot of pressure on the staff, and we have to be solid buffers so that we can decide what information do they need to be successful and productive in their roles, and where do I insulate them because it's just not helpful right now.
Did you have an organization that you were at where like that specific example that you kind of just talked through, like where you had to play that out and manage that coming into the company? What was that like?
I did, and it was tough. I was with a company for about 3 months, and we were notified by corporate that we were going to have to decrease our team size substantially. We were provided a payroll number that we had to reduce. And that meant we looked across our team that was already stretched thin and said, where can we make the least amount of damage? Where can we hit this number? Because we don't have a choice. But where is it going to cause the least amount of damage from a culture perspective, from a client, client resource perspective? And are there other ways that we can help ourselves accomplish our goals? if you've ever been involved in a layoff, sometimes you go home and you just cry because
I hear that often.
you know that you are impacting people's livelihood. And you are told that you have a specific script. That is all you get to say. I've been brought in with HR to lay people off, and I have a pit in my stomach, and I'm going to try to get through this conversation without vomiting. It's hard. And all you want to do is protect your staff. They didn't do anything wrong. They've worked very hard. And then I feel a sense of onus to help them find their next role.
Right.
And corporate comes in and tells you, you can't give a recommendation. You can't refer them. You can't talk to them. So you can't reach out to them. And I get to make a decision from, a place of, empathy that I'll follow some of your corporate guidelines, but there are others that have no basis. And I'm not going to follow those rules because I'm a human who's also been riffed from a company and had to figure it out. And I wholly expect that the people who told me last week that I was doing an amazing job and just keep doing what you're doing and you are integral to this company, who then came and laid me off, I expect that they're going to help me find my next role. That is our responsibility as people leaders in orgs. And this whole stance of we want to hire someone who's going to commit to 2 to 5 years at our company, but then as a company we can come in and riff them at any point without a leg to stand on, without severance or minimal severance, especially in a tough job market. That doesn't sit well with me. So I will try to do everything I can to help staff that have been riffed to find their next role. And it's uncomfortable for them because they just sat across from me on a Zoom meeting where I laid them off. But I hope that they understand that I am given a directive. I don't have a choice in the matter, but how can I help ease this burden that they have now of supporting their family or providing for themselves?
It's so tough. I do talk to a lot of leaders who have, especially we've seen this play out over the past couple of years, especially if you're in tech, how many rifts we've had to go through, and some companies multiple. And so I can't imagine having to do that multiple times. And to your point, it's just the cold cutoff from these humans who you've built real relationships with and have become an extension of, I hate to use the word family because I do know that there's a difference between my family and my work, but they become your friends, right? They become a part of you, and to just be able to cut them off so coldly and to turn your back on them. I'm like you. That's not something I would be able to do. I think at that point, if that was the mandate from the company and there would be ramifications, I think I'd have to leave as well, because at that point it's listen, there's a human element to the work that we do, and real leaders care deeply about their people and their success. And to your point, their livelihood. And so under no circumstance would a real leader be able to turn their back on employees that have worked hard for them.
Exactly. Yeah. I take another approach as well with staff. And I tell them it is a whole lot easier for me to promote you or support you in finding your next opportunity that's right for you if you have already established a solid succession plan and communicated that to me, other leaders in the org, and your staff. That opens the door for them to not be fear-based in their role, that somebody might want to take their role. It helps them think longer term. What are my motivators from a professional and a personal perspective? Who do I want to be when I grow up? I help them walk through an exercise that if they could design the perfect role for them, what would that look like? How would they collaborate cross-functionally with others in the org? Is there a totally different role that they've never held that they have had their sights on but been maybe afraid to vocalize or really dream about? What does that look like? And is there an opportunity for me to support them in getting there? And I think when we go about staff development in that manner, that should have a ripple effect down to the people that they mentor in the future. And my goal at the end of the day is to provide a creative, consultative, curious team and environment that has room for everybody. And I want to make sure that I'm instilling an open door policy, a true open door policy. The struggle I've had over the years is, how do I do that outside of my org? How do I get other people in the org and the leadership and our talent development team to go out and attract talent and make us available to talent that doesn't maybe subscribe to the same homogenous plan that we've had for so long, right? Let's take salespeople. A lot of people want to hire salespeople, old school, that were an athlete in college, that went to college, that will work hellish hours and give 150%. I don't want to hire that person. I want to open the door to somebody who would like to come in, who's solution oriented, who's figured out how to prioritize things well, who's organized, who likes to document their journey and their path to success. Somebody who wants to change their lifestyle for their family.
Talk
right?
about drive, right? Like you find something like that is the drive and the grit that'll be innately there, making sure that they'll be successful. So I think that's a great point. You don't see people talking about that enough.
Right. I was on a CRO coffee chat the other day, and we were talking about, what makes a good salesperson, what makes a good, CRO candidate. And then I was on that one maybe 2 weeks ago. And then I joined a SaaStr call earlier this week about how to develop solid sales teams and how do you recruit and interview and hire and build your effective sales team. And I appreciate the pivot that we're seeing to some extent. I still see this obnoxious requirement for a bachelor's degree, master's degree preferred.
For a master's degree for sales?
Preferred. That's their preferred. And I worked at a company that I love and I hold very dear to my heart. But one of the things that I struggled with the most was hiring good salespeople when they required me to hire only people with a college degree who had a 4.0 or higher.
Okay. All right. I got to pause here because my husband and I, we talk about this all the time. Because we have a daughter who's getting ready to go to school. Who is checking the credentials? Like, who is going and checking? Because anyone can go put summa cum laude on their resume. I'm not checking that. Especially if you have somebody who's worked a couple years, right? You're relying on their experiences. No longer is the education the big thing that I care about. So were people really validating that stuff? I need you to tell me. Is that being checked?
One time in my career, I had an organization actually check my credentials.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly one time. And the only reason I knew that they did was because I put down my education at University of Phoenix and I put MBA coursework because I didn't finish.
Right.
And they said, we're getting hung up because we can't find your graduation year. And I said, that's because I didn't graduate.
Yeah. And you're like, it says it. I didn't claim to have an MBA. I said MBA coursework.
Mm-hmm. That was the only time. And that was back in 2019, I'll say, 2020.
That's still too recent for me.
That's
if you told me that was 2006, I'd be like, oh, okay, all right, fine. 2008, maybe 2010. But you just said 2020 and I got really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And some of my best salespeople and CS people, who are, by the way, also all salespeople, whether they like to believe it or not,
I agree.
Have not had college degrees. And
so then what makes them great, right? Because it's clearly not the education. So what are the intrinsic things that drive them to be so wildly successful?
It's their DNA, their drive, their ambition, and their nature that I look for.
Right.
I look for their ability to problem solve. I want to hear that they have come up against big road bumps, big friction points in building pipeline, in converting sales. I want to hear that they've figured out how to manage a discovery process effectively and disqualify. I want to hear how many no's they look for, because they're going to get the yeses. If they give me the right amount, and there's no one size fits all, right, by the way, but I'll use this. I look for 1,000 no's. I will get 100 yeses. How many yeses do I need? And then I might modify that based on where I am. What is our TAM? Do we have product market fit? Or are we first to market? Nobody knows who we are, right? So that's going to modify my numbers a little bit.
Right.
But if I hear from someone that they have the grit and the determination, and they have, the discipline to follow a process, they're probably going to make a fairly decent salesperson. Those are some of the fundamentals I look for. I am not looking at how much revenue does your resume say you brought in over the years, right? I don't care if you brought in, or you say you brought in $50 million in revenue over the last 10 years. How did you bring in $50 million?
Right, because I was going to say, that doesn't tell you anything.
Doesn't tell me anything. So your achievements are one thing. I care more about how you got there. I care about how you pick yourself up when you just got kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're a good salesperson, you figure out how to be pretty nimble and resilient. So if I've got somebody who's scrappy and resilient, and they figured out how to be a decent salesperson, and they figured out when to exit a company because everything that they do is either going unnoticed or the clients are falling off the back end. And they can tell me definitively, I've tried all of these things to make sure I'm setting correct expectations at the outset of the relationship, that I feel like I've done a solid handoff. Maybe I could have done some things differently, but boy, we're still losing our customers, and that affects my commission. That kind of conversation tells me more about the organization and the structure of the organization than it does about, can this person sell or not?
Right.
But what it does tell me is this person's identified that there is a problem there that they're not able to influence to the degree necessary to be successful at that org. Therefore, it is time to sunset that role and move to another area where they can impact change.
And none of that has anything to do with where they went to college.
Correct. Or if they went to college.
Right. Or if they went. And I think it's so funny because I don't know what you went to school for, Steph. I went to school for public relations. And let me tell you, not one day in my career did I practice public relations. Not one day. Did it help me become a better writer? Probably. But I can't think of too many other skills that I learned getting my degree in public relationships that have transcended into helping me be successful at being a chief customer officer today, or even as part of that journey. Just very interesting to me, right? So what does the 4-year education matter? It's usually not even relevant. We're like checking boxes, and the fact that people are still so bent out of shape and like so hung up on this is so wild to me.
And I get that we want people who are well-rounded and that they have experienced things in life. So go and experience things in life. I have, my son is in school. He's post-military, and now he's using his GI Bill to go to school.
Love that.
And he has an aspiration for a very particular career. And he is getting hung up on math. So they are going to miss out on a highly skilled individual who has a passion for something and wants to do it, because he's getting hung up on something that's not as relevant for the role that he's going to be going for. But that's the prereq to get into that particular engineering program. And I know that math goes with engineering. Like that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into. But my point is there are prerequisites that are irrelevant in many degrees that you have to take before you can get into your specialized field. If we had the ability for people to go to college, to have a good job, well-paying job that can pay off those enormous student loans, right? If we could find a way to streamline the educational process, I may be more college focused. I may support that avenue more, but right now we're seeing an enormous amount of college graduates who cannot find adequate employment to support themselves, let alone a family. And they end up pivoting their career goals. One of my daughter's best friends, her best friend actually, whom I've known most of her life, is a teacher. She's come out of school with enormous debt, and she has one of the lowest paying careers I have come across. I am appalled at how little she makes and how passionate she is about her job, how good she is in her job. And she may have to change her career because she simply cannot afford to survive on that compensation. So why are we gatekeeping good paying roles to people and forcing everybody down this college route? And I wholly subscribed to it because I thought that was the only way I was going to be successful, is if I got a college degree, I worked my butt off as a single mom, and then I would make it.
Well, that's what we were told, right?
That's what we were told.
Yeah.
That's what we were told. And thankfully, I didn't come out with enormous debt, not like our kids are today.
Yeah.
Our college grads today, like, it's absurd. So, and I learned this over a period throughout my career where I had staff coming to me early on in an engagement with us and saying, what do I do to get a raise? I need a raise. I've been here for 6 months. I need a huge raise. Or they would come to me during the interview process and they all wanted $100,000 as a base salary coming in the door. And so I started to ask them why. Why do you need this? Why do you feel like your skills and experience demand this rate of pay?
Yeah.
I have to cover my student loans. Overwhelmingly, that was the response.
Crazy.
My student loans are $1,500 a month. They're $2,000 a month. That's more than my rent payment.
Crazy. Right.
It's insane. So if we want to be more inclusive and get more females or underrepresented folks and communities into tech and into sales and CS, we have to do away with some of these ambiguous requirements like a college degree.
Yeah.
Because that is not obtainable for many people, but they deserve the right to have a good paying career that's going to allow them to live a comfortable lifestyle. So things that I strive for are, how do I remove that? Going back to, working with our talent acquisition teams and kind of the way we go to market to find new talent and attract new talent. We have to be telling people and screaming from the rooftops, we have an opportunity for you at this company. And here's how we're going to get you to the level that you need to be successful. Here's how we're going to support you. That means companies have to go back to adding internship programs that aren't tied to colleges. That means we need different opportunities like Pavilion. I'm a member of Pavilion. You can take a ton of coursework for considerably less money than a college degree. We're talking somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 a year. That's one class elsewhere. You can take dozens of coursework in sales leadership, go-to-market principles, you can take chief marketing officer school, chief revenue officer school, revenue fundamentals. You can take all of this coursework that's entirely relevant to the job that you want, like your next career opportunity, or even the job that you're in, so that you can become better at it. And I've received substantially more value out of those type of continuing education that I ever got previously. So if I was consulting with, someone recently out of high school who says, gosh, I really want to go into sales. I like to be around people. I'm kind of a chameleon. I can walk into any room. I can attract people to talk to me. I'd say, great. How do we get you in sales? How do I get you into some of these mentorship programs that'll align you for sales and you don't have $150,000 or $200,000 in student debt? I would love it.
Yeah, we don't spend enough time focused on that.
No.
So I want to pivot for a second, but before I do just want to thank your son for his service. We appreciate that. And I hope that he does figure out his path into engineering.
And my daughter as well is former military.
Oh my gosh,
she's in
look
tech
at you.
now.
I love that. Well, thank them both for their service. I don't think that we do enough to appreciate what goes into that and the sacrifices they make for us. So appreciate it. The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success. We spent enough time talking about challenges and obstacles, and I'm sure we could do probably hours on all of that. But as women, we never spend enough time celebrating our successes. And obviously, you had to be successful to get to where you are today. So let's take a moment to celebrate you and let's reflect back a little bit. When you think about your career, what are some of those, the proudest moments that you have reflecting back?
People development.
Every great leader on this podcast talks about the people. I love it. All right. So tell me.
I love it. I tell you, I get some of the biggest thrills and excitement in my day when a former employee reaches out to me on LinkedIn, on a text message, because I've had the same phone number for 25 years, and says, "Hey, Steph, I'm looking at another opportunity and I wanted to get your feedback. How can I position myself to take on this role?" I will give them all the time in the world. Grab time on my calendar. I'm here for you. It's when I can take someone in a sales coordinator role, which is where I started, and I can watch them move into a sales enablement role or a head of revenue operations over a period of time, or maybe they want to go into sales leadership or CS leadership. That is the best reward that I could ever ask for. And it takes a lot of work to get there. I had to learn how to be supportive of people. I had to get really successful about identifying skills and potential in people, and then trusting that it's okay if they falter or misstep. That, sometimes when all the plates hit the ground and there are multiple pieces, putting them back together is a better solution, right? The design is better now. Now it's more functional. So I had to get out of my own way at times in my career, and hopefully I can instill that in others. But I found that I'm very good at building consistency. I'm very good at building sustainable and durable processes and procedures. Extremely good at documenting why things are successful, showing people by leading from the front that this is why we do something. And I'm also very good at identifying people's individual motivators and then tying the results that we need to their individual motivators. And then so I can motivate the behavior that's necessary to get to that desired result. I had one of our former founders at a company that I worked for a number of years. I talked to him last week and he said, "I just remember that you were always dependable and consistent. Your staff really enjoyed working with you. You still have a good name at the company. You haven't been here for 4 years and your name comes up all the time. And he goes, I just wanted to see what you were doing right now. Because I've struggled at hiring good sales leadership since you left.
Those are like some of the highest compliments you can receive that many years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hearing that your impact is still talked about, I think to me always is the sign of somebody remarkable, right? Because most people, you walk out the door and it's like, okay, who's next? What are we on to, right? Like, but to leave a legacy that is tied to the impact that you had, that's amazing.
Yeah, I had another startup that I worked for, and my job was to come in and build their sales team, build all their sales operations and revenue operations pieces, build out their SMB team, their partner team, and their mid-market sales teams. And then I asked for additional budget to hire people to run those motions. So I built it, but I'm only one person and I can't work, endless hours. I've learned that I don't have to do it all. I asked for more budget to do that and they were unwilling to provide that to me. So I decided that it was time for me to move on. Could I have stayed and argued that point more? I could have, but I think I have lived a life and a career that has told me that there is only so much impact that you can provide to a company. And there are times when you just would be better off exiting. Now, I still consult with that company, but it took 4 people to replace me.
Isn't that crazy? I hope they were paying you 4 people's salary.
That was my argument when I was there. I said, look, I'm asking for 1 to 2 additional staff, and I have given you a plan in place that will get my compensation where I want it. That is variable compensation. That is all, driven by us achieving certain financial milestones.
Right.
And that was not palatable for them. And now they're paying considerably more. And so I kind of look at that as
so short-sighted.
That's a lesson learned. I don't want to do that in another position. Meaning, when I am in the position to make those decisions and I have a staff member who comes to me themselves and says, this is my plan. I'm feeling overworked. I'm feeling underappreciated. And I see this path forward for this organization. I hope that my ears are open for that. Alternatively, if I see that happening at an organization, I want to be the person who steps in even before my staff has to come to me and say, it looks like you're at capacity. I'm seeing plates drop. What can I do to help support you in the next phase of growth? Let's look at your department structure. Let's look at what other resources you're going to need to maintain and then rise to the next level. Because that's our job as people leaders, is to support our staff. And I, so far, have been very good at designing that within organizations. I'm not always successful at getting all members on board at the board level or at the C-suite level to pull the trigger on that. And that is because I'm so good at doing so many things that I make it look easy. Therefore, I don't make it painful enough for them to want to add more staff in or give me more budget. So I think that's my biggest downfall, is I can do too much with so little. And I am in recovery for that.
It's sad, but that's not the first time I've heard something similar from another female leader. So that's something I guess everyone needs to work on. I do want to take a few minutes and talk about kind of advice you wish you would have learned earlier in your career, because I feel like that's something that's always very interesting to me, right? Like we've seen the movie. Now, if you had to play it back, what's the one thing you wish you would have learned earlier in your career that you think would have had significant impact on your success?
That just because they're in a position of power or in a higher level role than you does not mean they know what they're talking about.
Oh man, I felt that.
They're probably faking it.
Okay, now I have my own hypothesis of why I would agree with that. Why do you believe that to be true?
Because I've been at the top long enough now and worked with a lot of incompetent individuals who are so fear-based that they won't ask questions. They won't let people know that they don't know what they're talking about. And I have been so much more successful since I've said, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
So I'm going to ask all the questions.
Yeah.
And if I have this question, I know that 2 or 3 other people at the C-suite have the same question.
100%.
And they don't know how to do it, but they're afraid to say they don't know how to do it.
Right. Because everyone is pretending in their roles, right? And so it is so funny. I didn't realize that myself until I myself, became, I would say, like VP and above, that I used to have this like inferiority complex, right? Because of my, we won't get into all of my childhood stuff, but, I just never thought I was good enough. And so when I would get these opportunities, I'd sit around and be like, okay, I literally don't belong in this room because look at these people, right? And I made so many assumptions about their experiences and their knowledge and their expertise, and I put them on a pedestal, right? I had them up here, and I felt like I was so beneath them. But then to work alongside of them, and to your point, see the incompetence, or just like, I guess maybe not even to downplay anybody else, but to think how smart I was and how capable I was in comparison to the folks in the room. I wasn't less than. We had different experiences, but I was exactly where I belonged. And so I very much feel the sentiment of that statement.
Yeah, I'd say I grew up also feeling like I was less than. I was treated as less than the majority of my life. And it wasn't until I had been really, I was in a CRO role, years ago as well. It wasn't called Chief Revenue Officer at the time, but it was, executive director of an agency, and I ran CS and sales and marketing. So that is a CRO role. And I realized, wow, our founder doesn't know what he's doing. Our other leaders know part of what they're doing. Like they'll know their piece of the pie, but they don't understand the full go-to-market motion. And because I had taken it upon myself to lead sales, fix sales, go to CS, fix that side, go to the production department, fix that team, and figure out how to work cross-functionally, I went, wait, I'm the one who has the knowledge that spans this entire org. So I need to speak up. If I don't speak up, then who's going to do it? If I don't work to get everybody on the same page, rowing the same direction, who else is going to do it? Because they clearly hadn't figured out how to do it themselves.
There's so many people in leadership that emulate exactly what you've just described, and it's sad. But hopefully the rest of us will, to your point, speak up, speak out, lead out, take charge, and also feel comfortable just asking the questions, right? Because to your point, I think that's a big part of it. Well, before we wrap up today, Steph, I have to ask you, right? You covered a lot, and obviously so impressive your experiences. What's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with today?
Be the voice. Be the voice, open the door, hold it open for more people, make space at the table for them, and then give them the opportunity to fail forward. I think too many people are worried about dropping the plates. I have to hold all the plates. I have to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. It's okay. If you don't let things fall through the cracks, you'll never know what will happen when things fall through the cracks. And so many times that crack, if you can see this painting behind me, you can see windows and doors and opportunities that are over there. If we don't ever take the opportunity to open a door and look in it, fall in a crack, get washed out with the water, you can tell it's one of my favorite piece of art, then we won't know what's on the other side. And I bet you that what's on the other side is going to give you, at a minimum, good experience. Because we have to experience the bad and the good to appreciate both.
Yeah.
So if you never have a misstep, how are you ever going to appreciate the on-point steps that you have?
Well, I think we need to help everyone find organizations where they can do that in a safe environment. Because I think the fear, to your point earlier in our conversation, the fear is what contributes to these people striving for perfection and doing all the things and not being able to operate the way they should. We shouldn't be so fear-based, and we have to be in environments where it's okay to fail.
Yeah. We need to support one another. That's a big one. How can we
Yeah.
be supportive of one another and lift one another up and give people the opportunity to be the next best version of themselves?
I love that so much. What a powerful way to end. Steph, thank you so much for your time today. Your journey is like really, really impressive. I myself, I'm like, I got to circle back with you and talk to you about this like whole go-to-market ownership. I'm like, I'm interested, but really inspiring. And I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you so much. It was exciting to be on, and I can't wait to watch all of your other episodes moving forward. I've seen all the previous, and they're just amazing. These women are such a force to be reckoned with.
Well, there is a reason why I invited you here, because you are as well, Steph. So thank you so much for your time. For everyone, if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with me on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.